Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Garrett Jageman.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing all right, man. Garrett, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? And if you want, what do you do professionally?
Yeah, my name's Garrett Jageman. I run a company called Brutal Business Entertainment, which encompasses a lot of different areas of entertainment, from musical artists and the rap and hip hop scene and metal scene to modeling and photography. We have video game stream teams. We have a paranormal team, which we'll be talking obviously a little bit about today. Everything in between, 3 radio shows, a lot of different things encompassed within that group. So that's something I've been building up for years at this point. And then, I'm a paranormal investigator. Recently started a group. I've always done solo investigations for the last 15 plus years, and decided maybe it was time to put together a team, tackle some of the famous locations around the United States, and present what we can bring to the game, compared to what the TV shows and a lot of the other teams are showing. There's nothing wrong with that, but we wanted to kind of give our own blend of it.
You're a creator, man. You got a bunch of hands and a bunch of different cookie jars there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I keep pretty busy, that's for sure.
It's pretty nice, like, when you start something, you're like, I know a lot of podcasts that end up making like a network or these types of things. I find it so much fun just because not only the types of people you get to meet and the types of interests and things you can really talk about and go out there, but just creating media anyway in general. I mean, the whole factor is it's not super difficult. I think we can tell by like a podcast that's like 2 minutes long, but like the whole factor is it's just creativity in a whole new form, going from paintbrushes to basically just technology.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a different form of putting your creative abilities to show and giving it a showcase. And I mean, I kind of started out in the music world, and have been doing music for a very long time, which kind of branched into I wanted to start my own team and build something kind of different. And then it led into the bands and rappers together. It led into the photography and modeling. Then it just from there grew into the radio shows and everything else. So it's been kind of a wild ride. But as you said, I'm painting, my own story without the paintbrush.
Now, when we talk about what out of everything you do, what's the most interesting to you? Which one do you feel like you connect with the most?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on different stages of life. I mean, for the longest time, music was the sole, focus of mine. That's what my life revolved around. That's everything I did. And the other things kind of sprouted from it, that they were already things that I enjoyed, but I was able to kind of bring them to showcase. Now, over time, as getting a little bit older, I think I kind of shifted focus from, the music so much and the business more to spirituality, and just in getting out and experiencing things that are unseen to the normal human eye, and having those moments that, open up for you the gates and let you see that there's something so much more than what we see on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's become my favorite, even though it's something I've been doing for a long time. The further I dig into it, the more and more I discover.
Yeah, I feel like when like as a little kid or something, I was so interested in music. I thought this was like the only thing, and then I discovered podcasting. I mean, both my parents are radio hosts, so my dad
Okay.
ends up owning his own radio station. So like, when I first started this thing, he was like, "How do you want to do your voice?" I'm like, "This is how I normally talk. If I'm having conversations with people, this is how I'm going to talk. I don't think I could ever do the whole "You're listening to WK1A." Like I could never do
Yeah.
that for so long because then like even with my dad, like when we go out into public or something, he has his radio voice on. I'm like, dude, I know how you sound when you're taking a shit. You can't hide that freaking around me, like it's
Yeah,
that.
you get it. You lose yourself in character. I mean, you try to like undo it and turn it off, but a lot of times it still sticks with you. So if you have that created voice, you have to worry about the conflict of both sides. Where, like you said, this is my natural voice. This is how I talk. So I don't have to worry about that whenever I get off my radio show. I'm the same voice as I am on the radio.
Well, even like being a part of Celestial Oddities Para Seekers, I think I've said that so many times with you guys already,
You
and
nailed it this time. I heard
I'm
it.
freaking on it now. Now, when you're doing that, for instance, like I asked Tom what he brings to the group. What do you bring to the group? Like, are you the one that kind of manages a lot of the stuff, like kind of setting up schedules? You seem more of like a planner than most of them.
I mean, I would say a little bit of everything. I mean, I founded the group and kind of came up with the idea. I wanted to bring everybody together, but we're all equal parts in it. I don't look at anybody being ahead of anybody else, but I would say that I bring to the table a little bit of a different feel. I am an empath, so I do have feelings when I go into buildings of energies, and can sense things a lot of times. There's a lot of times I'm able to tell where in the house is going to be active before we even set up the gear. And then I do dabble in a lot of different communication techniques with, not only meditation, but mediumship and communicating and channeling with energy. So that brings something kind of new to the group as far as that element, to be able to see the spirits and energy from a different viewpoint. And sometimes it gives us insight, like our most recent investigation did a, medium communication channeling session, and had a vision of the attic of the building, had a vision of the two dolls that were in the attic on this one rocking chair. And I says, we need to go to the attic, being told that that's where they're going to be very active. And we went up there, and sure enough, we had a very active experience. But before the vision was through, I had felt the hands of two small, well, I guess just a child's hands, two small hands, grab the back of my, legs down towards my ankle while I was sitting on this couch in this dark room. And I felt the feeling, I felt the fingers, I felt the hand. And that's when the vision came, and I was already deep in meditation. And then we went upstairs. But as soon as I opened my eyes from that session, the REM pod was going off. The flashlight had turned on by itself and was turning on and off. We had some major activity in the room we were in, but we went upstairs, and it followed upstairs, and knocking, footsteps, lights on and off again, REM pod going off, multiple answers on the ghost box. It brings that, you know, knowing what to look for. So sometimes when you go into a giant building, you don't know where to go. But if you have someone that can kind of guide you and say, hey, I think this is where the energy is going to be, present tonight.
Well, a way I can relate to you a little bit too is on the factor of an empath thing. Something that I can explain that I experienced is probably something you experience as well, which is the factor of like the reason why I go to a grocery store usually so early in the morning, the reason why I'm a bit of a night owl, the reason why it's because people are asleep. And the reason why is when I go into a store, when I go and I sense people's energies, there's a certain vibe they give off, whether it's a inviting vibe. Sometimes a bunch of hate and a bunch of like bad energy, I would say, can bring me down and make me physically ill. Like there are
Absolutely.
times and moments where I'm just like laying down in bed. I don't feel like what like I used to take psychology back in the day. And when I was in college taking psychology, I would watch these 45-minute videos at 2 o'clock in the morning after like a workout or something. And they would be the most heartstring pulling videos you would ever watch. I watched a kid with schizophrenia that tried to set his whole family on fire because he believed King Tut was in his house. Yes, King Tut, the Egyptian guy. People that were dealing with severe mental issues that were really, when I was watching them afterwards, I would walk downstairs and get breakfast, and someone would be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Just don't talk to me for like the rest of the day," because you're just like, you're brought down. It feels like someone just take a wet towel and threw it on top of you. But like, I go out into the world, and I've talked about many times is how society has become a false society. We can't be ourselves truly because, it's like if I invite somebody for a podcast or something, a random person that I don't even know, they want to know what it's about because they think it's an attack. The world is, it's cold, I would say, and it really sucks, and it makes it hard to kind of find this genuine conversation or authenticity. But it brings to the point when if you can feel somebody's energy, what mood they're in, if they're in a good mood, a bad mood, which way to steer direction, what's to stop that from you being able to sense if there's another presence that's left here on this earth?
No, exactly. I mean, if you're sensitive to the point that you can pick up people's energy in that sense, that you walk through the grocery store and you can feel it, then you already have a sensitivity that might be a little bit more in tune than the average person. And when you go into a situation of paranormal and you start researching, if you learn how to sharpen those blades and you learn how to really focus the energy and use that as a tool rather than just something that you experience, it becomes pretty amazing the things that you can pick up on. So as you said, you have a sensitivity. You can learn through meditation and through, just crafting and working on that to pinpoint that. And by no means am I a master of that by any means, but it's something, and the more time you put into it, the more tight knit you can get with it. And the experiences over the years have been amazing. I mean, visuals of things in my mind, sure, they're in my mind. So some people could say, how is that valid? I'm seeing things that are not normally in my mind that correlate with things happening in locations with information that we couldn't have known that we find out is true. I mean, you start to pick pieces of things up through that, and wow, there's a tool to be had here that most people just don't understand.
Yeah. So for a certain example, and I'll ask one for you where you kind of realize this type thing was, I had a dream one time, and it was maybe 8, 9 months ago. and there was a person missing that was a friend of my mom's I did not know about, but I had a strong dream that there was this body laying in a ditch in the middle of like a channel, like kind of like a gutter in a way, but more like there's like a canal, I would say.
Okay.
And so it was so impactful. And I'm an insomniac. So when I dream, it's a fucking dream. Like 20 minutes is like 20 years. I'll wake up, drool on the pillow and shit. And I remember coming downstairs so shocked because this dream felt like I woke up, felt like knives were going into my heart. And I went downstairs, started getting some cereal. And my mom's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I just had this weird dream." So I started explaining it to her and seeing this body and this thing. And she goes, "Wait 1 minute." And then she grabs her phone, starts going through Facebook photos. About a minute later, she shows me a photo of this guy. And I said, "That's the guy from my dream." She said, "Where did you see this?" And I explained to her where I saw it. Gave her a descriptive kind of thing, like, "Oh, it's like a canal." And I kind of explained a little bit. Next thing I know, they find this person, which was a friend of my mom's, at the location I had described. And it was something so freaking like unexplainable where if I told a random person that, they'd be like, "Okay, sure." But it's easier to talk to someone that has able to kind of know this kind of side of things, be able to see something. I watched my dad, who doesn't believe anything supernatural, paranormal, ghost, become a believer the night a little girl about the time I was around the age of like 7, or it's either it was 7 or 11, not to do with the gas station, but it was around one of those two ages. And a little girl had gone missing and her parents were looking for her. Basically, at this point, she had been missing so long that they were looking for a dead body. And my mom had a dream of where the little girl was. The little girl came to her in a dream and told her where her body was. And all she said was, tell somebody so my parents can rest, my parents can stop worrying. And my mom literally came up to my dad in tears, crying and screaming like in panic I had never seen before, and I had told my dad, "You need to call the cops anonymously and tell them this is where the body is." My dad's like, "I'm not doing that." And eventually he did, and found the body of the little girl. And my dad had been a believer ever since. So to think that there's not these skills or these inherent abilities that people can have that are just in touch with, who's to say we all don't have a hidden ability?
Oh, and we do. I mean, the thing is this is not something that I mean, don't get me wrong, there are people who certainly are born and it's just already more tuned in than most, but this is not something that's just this amazing gift of God. I mean, everyone has it. It's amazing. It is an amazing gift, but it's something that's not special per person. Some people are just more finely tuned in. You can learn to, like I said, harness that and fine tune that. Everyone could. It's just time, it's work as anything. I mean, you take a stone and you polish it and it turns into a gemstone, but its raw form is not that. You can do that with your mind. It's just the time, work, and effort to do it. And most don't make that time and effort. When's the last time you really took time to work on your mind? You get up in the morning, you get a shower, you brush your teeth, you eat, you take care of all of your physical things that need to be done. You go to work, you go about your day, but when's the last time you sat down and worked this, worked your mind? You don't. You work your body, you work everything else, you worry about everything else, but you don't clean out the clutter in your mind and strengthen it. And once you start to do that, just like any other muscle, it becomes strong and your abilities become a little bit more fine tuned than the next man. And the more you do it, the more it builds. So that's what people, if they took the time to realize, there's so much, untapped potential.
Yeah, realizing kind of we're all connected, it kind of brings up more of a credit to the theory of there's like a line that connects us all, like a global brain, I would say. Like the global brain theory is like if you looked at the planet Earth right now, every single thing that sends off a Wi-Fi signal, all these things, you can see them all connect, all of these giant satellites, these major focal points, which are like kind of key structures into your brain. But I believe as people, all of our souls are inherently connected as well. I think that the way we've been living for so long, disconnected and kind of away and kind of secluded into our own groups, is against our inherent nature to want to be in groups. I mean, the whole reason why you surround yourself, like if you're a paranormal investigator, you surround yourself with other paranormal people because they know, like they believe you as much as you believe, the whole thing. It's you want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals, but down to our core, we're so connected. And it's amazing to me to see people that are so disconnected of other people. Like, it's not tossing out shade or anything to people out there that whenever are in a bad mood or something, but so much people that just don't want to conversate, don't want to do anything, just want to isolate themselves and do the same thing over and over again. I'm like, it's a lot of the reasons why depression hits in is because inherently we're all wanting to connect, not through social media, which it has given us a false sense of communication, but more of a sense of being around each other's present, like a laugh around somebody feels so good to you. Sometimes you get that charge, like a conversation. Like for me, if I get into one, I'm so engaged, I feel like I can run out the door and take on the world. Like if it's a good conversation. And then there's the wet towel personalities that are like dragging you down, just complaining about stuff. These types of energies are real things. And the reason why I'm so interested in talking about it is the factor is it's very hard for people to understand that because so many people don't know what that is feels like just because they've ignored it for so long.
Well, I mean, everything in the world is created from vibration. I mean, that's a scientifical fact. I mean, we are all vibration, from dense forms of vibration and lower forms of vibration to very high, thin forms of vibration. Everything is vibrating and in motion at all times. We don't see it as such with our physical eye, but it is. A rock, a giant boulder, it has a vibration to it. And the only reason when you impact your vibration with it that you feel it is because it's the different colliding vibrations. Is we see it in a visual sense, but it's not the rock as our mind makes it up to be. It's more than that. Now, whenever you stay at a certain vibration, you give off certain vibrations, you harmonize in rhythm with other vibrations that are like-minded. So that's why people that do keep to themselves and they don't talk to other people and then they do develop depression and all these other tendencies, they're all lower vibrational things, and they all, misery loves company, they all kind of stick together with those vibrations. Same thing that if you're a really bubbly happy person, usually you go about life really happy because you're giving off very strong high vibrational frequencies that hit and harmonize and lead you down the path of higher vibrational frequencies. And you can learn to, transmute that and turn the low into the high or vice versa if you want to, but people don't. They stay in that wavelength. They get into that low vibration, they stay there. There's the people that, constantly making posts on Facebook, I hate life sucks, why things like this always happen to me, because you are putting yourself in the pit. You dug the pit for yourself, you jumped in and you refused to climb out, but then you wonder why you're stuck in the pit. And it blows my mind that we have become so weak as a race of how we think. The things that have been thrown at us over the years, they have dumbed us down so much that people don't think for themselves anymore. Like if you're sad, you don't like life, you don't like the things around you, then change the things that you're around. But people don't. They'll just stay there and continue to hate where they're at. But if you put yourself in those high frequency vibrations, you're going to meet and see and connect with other high vibrational frequencies, and that changes life. And when you learn how to really, see that and see the synchronicities, then life starts changing for you pretty dramatically.
And even when we talk about like you don't need to be an empath to kind of feel these things either, more on the aspect of like there's people that take drugs that'll bring them to this point of clarity, that'll bring them to this realization that people do give off energies or they do come in contact with something. Like I know people that have taken DMT and completely thought differently about the world, mostly on their experience, but not only taking a drug to get there, but also like astrology, for instance, the people that believe that from the astrals and all these types of things, like all their, your sign can be a common link to what's going on in your life and all these things. It's all through a form of meditation, which is why I'm so open-minded to it all, because it seems like we're all getting pieces of the same puzzle, but we're trying to like take bits and pieces and think this is it, this is all, this is what the answer is. And it's like maybe they all coincide together to create one giant picture. It seems like we all are just trying to create our own small little image.
True. And I mean, the thing is people spend their lives looking for the bigger picture and don't take time to look and see that this is it. We are in the bigger picture. There's just a lot of things you don't see when you look at it. You just take it at face value and you see it and you're like, okay, it's a beautiful thing. Life's great. What's the meaning of life? What's beyond life? What's next? What's the importance of it? But you're missing the fact that this is the importance of it. And it is all very changeable and adaptable, and it's not what it's made out to be. And I know it's hard for anybody listening out there. They're gonna be like, what is this guy talking about? He's rambling. But you can, like I said, go within your mind and learn to tap into different things that you didn't know existed and change the things around you. And you realize, wow, this life is not exactly as it's made. It is very physical. It's reality. It's reality as we see it and perceive it, but it's also bendable. And that's a great thing. It gives you freedom. I think that we are all kind of trying, as you said, to find our original faculties. We had powers beyond our abilities that we lost, and over time our journey as a human being is to see whether or not we find them again. Do you stay in that low form and keep living it over and over and over again? Or do you continue to ascend and then see what's next after that? Because I think that's what it is you have the ability, just whether or not you're going to find it and tap into it.
And even kind of like it seems like you're revealing the curtain from your own eyes. Like, what experiences have you had that have brought you to this point where it seems like the curtain has kind of been revealed? Like, you've seen, like, oh, there is something else here that you've been totally kind of, I guess, neglecting.
I mean, just the whole bigger picture, man. I mean, for everything from the visions and channeling sessions to even seeing spirits in general, when you see a full manifestation, a full body apparition walk past you, and you see this thing that doesn't make sense, and you're like, how can it be there? There's something beyond this. What is that? And you start to be able to communicate with them and get answers from them. You can ask it to knock, and it knocks. You say, can you turn that flashlight on? It turns a flashlight on, yet you see nothing in front of you, only when it wants you to see it, or it builds up enough energy. You start to say, wow, this life is pretty crazy. And then if you take the meditation aspect and start to dig within your own mind, not even in the visual world, but the inner world, it's another doorway. It's another set of eyes. As you mentioned DMT earlier, I mean, that's a natural chemical ingredient inside your pineal gland in your brain. And the pineal gland is your third eye. And most people that'll never open, and this is a real thing, is if you learn to uncrust, most people's gets crusted and calcified over the years because they don't use it. But if you actually meditate, you actually knock that rust off there, and you can learn to operate that and open that. And when you open that, it changes the game. It's a game changer. It's imagine everything you've ever experienced, and then now having a different eye that sees it completely different. It's opening a whole new doorway to your mind.
Well, even like you said, when you see a apparition appear in front of you and walk in front of you, the first thing that's going through your brain is trying to figure out how is this exactly possible? It's looking for an answer, and the answer is right in front of you, but you're searching for something scientifical. You're searching for something that is so deep where you could have physical proof, like it came from a scientist's notepad, and that's not always what it is. What you got to think is the fact that if somebody leaves this earth, there has to be somewhere else because their energy can't just stop. That's why I've always talked about like a place like Alcatraz or a place like Auschwitz or something that's been stained with so much pain, so much of people's energy that it's got to be stained into the walls. I mean, feel when you walk into a place like that's like somewhere like that, like a battlefield, and you know what that is. Like, for instance, when I went to Pearl Harbor Museum, walking on top of that and the ships down below in Hawaii, I felt the fucking tenseness in the air. Like, it felt thick, like you were trying
I'm
to
sure.
move through gravy. And like, it was hard because a lot of people weren't sensing that. A lot of people are just walking around taking selfies in front of all the names and everything. And it was angering me only because of the fact that I was feeling like the most pressure in the world. And it was so hard to get out of it. And that was just because there was a severe amount of tragic loss there. And being able to experience that really opened my mind up to the possibilities that there has to be an afterlife, on the concept of all that energy, all that feeling. That's something I can't explain. It's not something I'm looking for a scientific reasoning to explain. It's just we give off energy on a daily basis. There has to be another thing. And that's why I'm so interested in the paranormal, because I hear everybody's experiences, everybody's things. And it's like, it's not like TV. It's not like you're going to see it in a movie where Ghostbusters and all these things. No, 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 no. It's nothing like that. It's actually more subtle. And sometimes it can be even more scary.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's you never know what exactly is going to be given to you. I always look at paranormal investigating as a true gift. That if that spirit is willing to communicate with me, I'm very thankful and humbled by that, because that's what it's about. I don't care at the end of the day if anybody ever believes the stories I experience or tell. I don't care if they see any evidence from me. I don't care about fans or any of that. I'm there 100% for me. I'm there for the communication and experience to talk to the spirits. Having the team, having all the other stuff behind it is just a great bonus. But you never know if even if it's the flashlight turning on and off. If you sit a flashlight down and it can turn a flashlight on and you ask it to turn it off and it turns it off right then and there, you're like, wow, not only is it there, it hears me. It's responding to me. Then like I said, it's a game changer. Then you can start doing other things. Can you set that REM pod off, or can you change it to this color? And it change, it starts happening. You're like, holy shit, like there's powers all around me that I don't see. And it's everywhere. And like you said, in afterlife, I don't like that term so much, but everybody uses it. I use it myself. Is we think that death is like the end, and what if there's something after the end, the afterlife? Death is just a part of the picture. I mean, nothing ever dies. It completely just transcends into something else. Your energy, as you said, your energy is a flesh manifestation. Once that passes and the flesh is no longer valid, that energy of who you are, if you want to call it spirit, if you want to get religious with it, that is going to continue to travel somewhere and go into something, and it never dies. There's no such thing as death. It just keeps going and going. No, it might no longer be you. It might not be the ego, because that's what human beings have, is we're all spirit, but we're given a body to drive around in. Our body is our car. Our brain is our GPS. It tells us where to go, what to do, this and that, but there's something beyond that. There's the life essence that is us. And then there's our GPS system we installed, and then the car that we put it in. And when those two things go away, that spirit still lives. It just lives in a completely different form.
Yeah, I think I started to notice when I was a kid, like if I look back on it, I went to my great grandfather's funeral, my great grandmother's funeral, but when I went there, I didn't feel what I would feel if I was just watching somebody sleep. You know what I mean? It just was an empty husk.
Yeah.
Obviously, I knew they were gone, but getting down to like a real feeling in my gut, in my chest, just looking at it was like, there's nothing here. There's no remnants. There's nothing here.
The
And if
light's gone.
yeah, and it feels like when I go into their house, though, there's more of an inclining of them being there. More of like, it feels like there's something here with me. You know what I mean? That type of thing where, it comes with objects too. Like, something I have on my great grandfather's, it feels like I can feel him closer than I could if I was near his body or something. I was like, why is that? Is that so? Is it, I believe it's because they've left such an impact, or left such a presence of their energy left into an item or into a place that you can pick up on those things.
Well, yeah, it's metaphysical residue. I mean, that's what I like to refer to it as, is that they were in their homes. So their energy and the residue that it sticks to everything around it, it stays in the home. But if they pass, then they're taken to a funeral home. That casket, that room that they're in, they weren't in. They never gave their energy off. At that point, the energy was gone. It's just a shell, as you said. And that's why it doesn't feel like there's nothing here of my grandma or my grandpap. It's gone. But when you go to their house, you still feel it, because that metaphysical residue is still emanating, still giving off a presence of them. That's how ghosts kind of come through, is there's a strong enough, residual wise, I'm not talking intelligent hauntings, but residual hauntings, they're giving off enough energy that it'll even play loops of time. I mean, that's why prisons, you hear guards walking around doing their rounds over and over again. You just hear footsteps and you don't see anything. It doesn't respond to you. It's not an intelligent haunting. It is just a blip of time that enough energy and residue is still stuck in those walls. As you said, a place like Auschwitz, a place like, Eastern
Alcatraz.
State Penitentiary or Alcatraz, any of these places that have high death counts, high amount of energy that's been given off, sorrow, happiness, pain, everything, it emanates on those walls. And sometimes it's able to push off just a playback. It's how does that work? I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever really figured it out, but it is a playback of a clip of history. Now, the intelligent hauntings are something altogether different. That's a type of being. That's enough of an energy that it travels on its own. It's intelligent and can answer. And it's another person. It's just in a different form. Whereas, like I said, the residual is just, you can't interact with it. It is just a playback.
Is that because they're too new, would you say, or they're just not strong enough to pierce through that what seems like a veil? Because like they always talk about like the amount of energy, to be able to move a cup and flick a light is one thing, but in be able to show itself in a physical form is so much more impactful. It's why I've always talked about that. I think the doorway or the gateway, the kind of the bridge the gap between these two, I guess, planes of existence will be the factor of your dreams. When you're able to dream, you're just not holding any thoughts or any things in your head that are blocking you from feeling that connection or feeling that energy or that presence of things. I feel like that's where ghosts can communicate a little easier. I've had dreams from lost loved ones, whether that was my brain trying to make up something for, grief wise or something. But I mean, even years and years later, where I'm like, why am I? I've gotten over that. Why am I, it's still bringing me back to that. Something that's so impactful where I end up finding out information I never even knew. Like my great grandfather, I had a dream that I talked to Sean about where he was just lying outside on like a gravestone, and we're all inside celebrating his funeral, or, at his funeral mourning. And next thing I know, I'm like, wait a minute, he's still alive outside. I could have had all this time to talk to him. And I run outside and he tells me some things. And I ended up talking to my dad, when I woke up from this dream about it. And he's like, your great grandfather told you that? And I was like, well, yeah, he did, but in like my dream. And then I was like, well, that's actually a thing. Like I found out that he ended up doing NASCAR before it was NASCAR, like on dirt roads and shit. I didn't know that when he was alive. Like I found that out through a dream, and I was just like, "Hey, Dad, is this like a thing?" And then he was like, "Yeah, your great grandfather used to do that all the time." And I was like, "What?" Like, yeah, until he was about 30. Then he had kids, and then he stopped doing it because it was too dangerous. So I was like, "Wow!" And he said, "Where'd you get that information?" On me just telling him that, he just looked at me like, I can't say no because it's so true. But that's like, if that's a guess, that's a good guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can, they, spirits like to communicate with a lot of people in their sleep because your defenses are down. As I said, we have lost sight of our original beings. We have clouded it. We are satellite dishes, so to speak, that had a clear signal at one point in time. But over time, we've allowed it to dull and dull and dull. And that's why children see ghosts so easily and experience the paranormal so much more than adults, because over time, it's not that you don't want to believe. There's a lot of people who believe and still don't have experiences. It's because you've left the soot of life cloud your signal. And as you get older, you lose that. But when you're sleeping, whether it's the stage between being awake and sleep, which is the hypnagogic state, if you're in that state, you can communicate or have a lot more ideas. That's where meditating really takes off, because you put yourself in that hypnagogic state and you can communicate more easily. You're not fully asleep, you're not fully awake, you're something in between. And then sometimes they come to you in REM sleep and in your dreams, because at that point, like I said, your defenses are down. The average person who wouldn't experience it can now experience it. But once again, I mean, it's tuning that in. I mean, if you put your defenses down, they come to you, but you can learn to tune that same hypnagogic state and communicate with them. They're always there, they're ever present.
And the difference between an unintelligent haunting and an intelligent haunting is the factor of how much power it has. If it's able to kind of, answer questions, be able to respond to you rather than just make something, move, or you see like on a TV show, like something that's like a apparition standing there, then it disappears. It's because it may, I mean, the fact to break through the veil, how much energy that probably takes to be able to do so is probably a lot. And it probably needs a lot of experience and time to be able to do that, or needs to build up enough. And I feel like when it comes to like something that shows up and then like ends up like snapping or throwing something or doing something like that, like that's just because an amount of anger creates a little bit more energy. But I believe if you learn to focus that in, I wonder what a spirit could actually do.
Well, see, I think that the two of them are different. You can have the residual hauntings that are just audible, knocking on walls, things that play in loops. They're not responding to you, it's just happening. Or even see an apparition walk down the hallway, turn and walk through the door. That could, but that if it does the same thing always and it doesn't respond to you and it just does that, that is just a playback of a piece of history, or just a film, so to speak. It just is, it's just the same thing over and over and over again. That happens. It'll never respond to you. Any type of it shutting doors, opening doors. I mean, there's a fine line. Like I said, if it's always the same door, it could just be a playback of it opening the door. It doesn't change the fact that the door is opening, but it's not something that's like a living being. Whereas the intelligent hauntings, I mean, whether it's an apparition you actually see that interacts with you, or if it's audible, it's whispering on audio and everything, that is something it's there, it's around you. I mean, look at it. We talked about it on my radio show the other day. Radio. Think about the fact that there's radio stations. All you have to do is grab a radio, flip it on, turn the dial, and there's the station you want to listen to. But every radio station on that radio, or on that box that it shows visually, is still around you at all times, flying past your head invisibly. You can't hear it, but it doesn't change the fact that the radio station you can turn on in 10 seconds is still playing around you right now. The only difference is you have a transmitter that you turn on and boom, there's the sound.
That's what I
How
talked
can there,
about with Sean, was the fact that, like, if you look at like a little like walkie-talkie radio, there's
yeah,
different channels, and some people are tuned into a different channels. People that can see sounds, or they can be able to have this thing where you're hearing them. Like, wait a minute, you can hear color? That doesn't make sense. You can hear color. It's a factor of some people can sometimes have their wires crossed. People that can feel. When they, if they stick their hand on an oven, a burning stove or something, it feels good to them. Their wires are crossed. At the same time, people that are able to tap into other things, other channels, other frequencies. I mean, right now, as we're talking, there's a signal coming from your laptop or your phone beaming up into the sky, and it's invisible, and we can put our hand right through it because we just can't perceive on that level. To think that that doesn't exist on a spiritual thing is, it boggles my mind that people can just justify that. I mean, the government just came out recently during COVID with the fact that aliens and shit are real. Nobody batted an eye because of the fact is COVID. It's like, hold on a minute. We tried to storm Area 51 in September, and now you're telling me the government's telling us it's true and nobody even gives a shit because there's some invisible cold or disease out there, which it's pretty horrible. But at the fact thereof, there's shit out there that we are looking for an answer for, and when it does, we're just not satisfied. We're just not happy with it. And because we enjoy the mystery so much.
yeah, it's weird. Human beings are an interesting race. I mean, to the way that we look at things, always wanting more, always thinking there's a bigger picture, and not taking time to accept the picture that is, you miss the whole point. And at a face value, someone hears that, they don't get what that means. But sometimes you have to dig to find it. You can keep traveling down the road. You might not find what you're looking for because you're always on the surface looking and looking. But when you just stop where you're at, start digging, maybe it was under your feet the whole time. And like I said, there's a lot of that. And when you tune that frequency and you realize that all those radio stations are around you at all time, but you're not tuned into it because you can only do so with the radio. What if you become the radio?
Like a transmitter for the other side too.
For the other side. And that's what I've been spending years on working on. And I'm far from where I want to be, but you can really start to, and as any, medium will tell you, or anybody channeling, you can really tap into that. And there, it's easier than you think. I mean, it's hard. It's a lifelong thing, but I mean, it's easier than you think because we think it's impossible. It's easier in the sense that you can definitely do it. It's just going to be a lot of work. And it brings more even when I'm not trying to do that and I'm just at a haunted location. I feel the feelings. As I said, it's sharpened my empath abilities where I walk into a room and I'm like, whoa. There's been rooms I walk into, as you said, the thickness. I mean, as soon as you walk in, it's suffocating, and everybody else standing there is absolutely, and I'm not even talking my group, I'm just talking individuals in life, don't feel a thing, as you said. And you're looking around, you're like, no one else feels that. Like, oh my God, like something's here. It's heavy. It's around us. And it just amazes you that you're like, how can I be the only one perceiving this? Why is that? Is everybody else's senses so dull? Why? That just thrusts me to want to sharpen my senses even more. I'm like, well, what else is possible?
Yeah, when I mentioned at the beginning, what you kind of bring to the group wasn't more of like who's better in the group. It was more of like you guys running a team that seems to bring their own unique individual thing that supports it as well. Well, with all doing the same inherent things when it comes to setting up and kind of going to the scene and doing, what you guys have to do to be able to, come across these hauntings and things too, but more like you all have your own thoughts and opinions, the things that have gotten you to where you're at today in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's so important. Like what really interests me about your guys' team is the fact there's six of you. That's six people with six different life experiences, different stories, different thoughts, different experiences. Not when it comes to just life, but paranormal, for instance.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important to have, and what really kind of entertains people to watch and want to see, because you guys are able to focus in, like for instance, you being more in touch with your emotions rather than just going in off technology. You're able to sense maybe something that technology can't pick up, because to be honest with you, we need to email Elon Musk and tell him to stop sending fucking Teslas in space, and tell him to start maybe making stuff to be able to find another spiritual plane, or find a device that can actually help capture some of this evidence to be open to the world, because seeing is believing. And for a lot of people, we don't see with our eyes. We see with, we don't, not our hearts, nothing. We see with facts. That's all it is. We want someone to do the research for us and show us proof clear evidence that it exists, rather than just taking the chance to go see it themselves.
Well, I think that's what's needed though. I think having to experience it yourself is truly change to accept it, because we've seen things on TV, on movies, on pictures, on Facebook that, you're like, well, I don't know, man, it could be a ghost. I mean, it definitely is, but you're looking at it like, I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. You see footage. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if I believe that. It's like you could show someone the best evidence ever. They're still going to find a way to doubt it. But the only way that they won't doubt it is if they're there in person and it happens to them. Some people would still try to, nope, I didn't experience it. I didn't experience that. But if you are truly in tune with your own feelings and you trust yourself and your own senses and you have that experience, you're like, holy shit, like, wow. Like a complete skeptic goes from skeptic to full blown believer. I just seen a man walk down the hallway, turn and look at me and wave at me and then walk through the wall. And you're like, how you start to like really tear at those stitches of the fabric of reality. And you're like, oh my God, like I have always believed this exact thing. We all believe to some degree that the wall is right here. But what if it's not? What if that wall is very, discombobulating? And what if it throws you off and it just is simply a illusion?
Have you
Dig
ever
into the illusion.
Have you ever had those thoughts where you start to question things and dig a little deeper into it? Like the fact that I'm talking to a device that's built on wires and a bunch of frequencies that are all kind of coordinating together, all these little cogs in motion that are just being able to put up a little funny projection on a screen where I'm able to communicate with you. Do you ever dig down into the fabric of things like existential reality? The fact of like when you walk up to a wall, like you're saying, like this is all just a bunch of moving particles together vibrating at the same frequency, being able to create an object. Like, you ever tear down things to that kind of train of thought? I find like once I start doing that, it ends up like the movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, where it's like, fuck, we're on this planet and 7 years is an hour here, like that whole thing.
Yeah.
Like I start to really dig. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not an idiot, but Interstellar messed me up for 2 weeks, dude. I was freaking out of it. Like, I was thinking of everything when he started flying through and he could like try and break through the reality but couldn't pierce through that thing when he got sucked in the black hole to be able to touch what was going on Earth, being able to kind of show that presence. And he ended up hitting it so hard a bookshelf fell off the wall on Earth. And I'm like, is that what spirits are? Are they trying their hardest to be able to communicate to this thing that's like mud where they can barely just touch our fabric of reality? It makes you think.
I mean, you look at it this way. There is 24 levels of dimension. We as human beings, to our cognitive mind, only operate on 4. Through deep levels of meditation and heavy spirit work and ritualistic practice and ceremony, we've only ever really been able to obtain 12 or 13 out of 24. And those 12 or 13 turn this world into, a cartoon. I mean, it turns it into something beyond our wildest dreams of things happening around us. It completely destroys what you define as reality. But think of that. That is only halfway up the spectrum. And most people will never pass past 4. Height, width, depth, time. Those are the 4 that we know as dimensions. That's 3D and 4D. But what happens when you get to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? You start to say, "Oh my God, what is going on?" I mean, I imagine if there wasn't the dimension of time. Time stood still. There is no time. We don't even think about it. We can't perceive that because it's such a ever-present thing. Time, since we started the show, has ticked away. We're getting older. We're aging. The second you're born is the second that you start dying. It's forever present. That's only one dimension. That's only one piece of the puzzle out of 24, and we've only ever reached 13. What the fuck do those you know other levels hold? And
I'll
we
tell
don't
you
know.
the I'll tell you the same thing I told Tom. If it's like Doctor Strange and the mirror dimension exists, fuck that. That is something I don't think I could ever be able to perceive. It's the reason why I will never take a heavy acid trip, because just blending that reality and being like, you enter in so far. I've heard so many people that have gone down some serious drug trips where like when they came back they just weren't themselves. I mean, you got to think, being able to break and bend through that reality and then kind of come back to what is present as normal. Like I always talk about, I've smoked weed and it's completely changed my perception on the world. I can see detail that I'm glossing over on an everyday basis. It's got me more into the fact of being able to hone into slow down. This is reality. You're missing major things, such as the feeling of a table, such as the smell of a good smell, the hear of or the sound of the wind or something rustling through the trees. Things that we are totally neglecting on an everyday basis. Most people are, because of the concept of we have other things on our minds. Sometimes you need to reel that back and head into what you were saying before. Focus on the mental. Focus on the inside. I mean, I don't sleep ever. So, well, I mean, maybe like an hour every couple of
I've
days
never
or something.
slept before.
Well, I wish, but no, it's more like I'm up all the time because 20 minutes of sleep for me is just a full charge to me. And I spend a lot of time in my head, thoughts, everything, just trying to analyze what's going on in my life, just trying to look at problems and stay away from what we call as future worrying, where people are worried about the next car payment that's coming up down the road. More on the lines of trying to focus on your own life, where you're at right now. Where's my moral standing?
Well, you know what you need to do, man, is obviously, as you said, you spend a lot of time inside your own head, and that's great because most people don't even go that far. But the next step for you is you're trying to hear what the voice inside is trying to tell you, but in order to hear it, you must silence it. And once you learn to silence everything in your head, you don't have those thoughts of what's going on tomorrow. How am I going to make these bill payments? Oh, this is happening in my life. This good, this bad. You have all these things that are meaningless at that time. When you learn to go inside your own head and just silence it all, then the answers come. And it sounds so simple, but it's so hard. But it's really not. Once you start taking those steps, is it's all there. Everything inside your head is there. All the keys to the puzzle, to sight, to seeing ghosts, to seeing paranormal, to experiencing godlike abilities and entities and things out there. It's there, and it sounds like a bunch of crazy talk that some madman would talk about. And you hear it, and you're like, okay, what is this guy on? Nothing. Life's all you need to be on, because when you actually tap into it, you experience it. And the thing is, we've only ever scratched the surface. We're like 3% of what's actually happening. We love that 3%. And that 3% is 100% to us, because that's the only 3% we know. So we're like, oh, this is life. But it's really not. I mean, you've just experienced a sprinkle on the cake. You never even took a bite of the cake.
Seems like there's two pathways, kind of like a fork in the road of where we can go in society for the future generations. One, the millennials, all these people that are coming up, can either be surrounded by technology that cuts us off completely whole from each other, or the other route where we're becoming so health conscious, so about these foods that we eat, what we're putting in our body, and then we could just turn into this thing that ends up finding a better way of relaxing forms of meditation. I've seen, back in the day, ADHD when I was in school was seen as being mentally challenged. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but my school thought I was mentally challenged on the aspect of I had way too much energy. I couldn't sit still. Getting up out of my seat was a constant thing. They just thought I had a problem with listening, which I did, but they thought that was a mental deficiency rather than a energetic thing. So now in schools, they're doing forms of meditation instead of recess. They're doing all these things to become in touch with yourself, trying to figure out ways to calm down anger before it approaches. Back in the day, kids used to fight. That was it. You fought, got over it, and moved on. Well, let's try and stop the fight. Let's try and stop the anger and focus in on where that's coming from. I think a way that we can take as a society is being more in touch with ourselves, because we're not it's going to be so hard for us to connect to people without being in touch with ourselves, but it doesn't make it any easier when we go out into the world and we just don't communicate. That conversation is needed. It's going to help clarify pathways within ourselves. It's going to open up some doorways, find out what you really want to do, which is, you look at COVID, for instance, that gave so many people the ability, sitting inside their homes all day, to try and literally force change, trying to figure out, where do I want to do, what do I want to go with my life. Next thing you know, someone ends up starting their own business when they come out of it. All these types of things. This is where I saw a benefit of it. It gave you a chance to find clarity. It gave you a chance to come out of the system for a minute and figure out, oh shit, I was just in a system. And that's where we're seeing all this tension that's sparking up. Bunch of people fell out of a routine, fell out of a thing, and realized they weren't happy. They were on autopilot. And I think this is a start of something, and I'm hoping it's good, but the way we're taking it is not, because I think that something's trying to put us right back into the cogs again.
Well, there's always going to be the gravitational force to try to pull you back down. you have to get over the hump. I mean, it's the rhythm, it's the pendulum, it's ever swinging from one side to the other. So you have those huge highs followed by heavy lows. But for a while, if you don't put enough force into the rhythm, it's not going to swing over to that point where it goes towards the highs again. And that's the problem. Is this is a pivotal shift right now. COVID, the riots around the world, everything happening is a lot of energy, good, bad, sad, and different. A lot of energy is being pushed out by a lot of people, and it's been in our lifetime one of the only times I can think of something this pivotal, and it's happened throughout history, but this is one of them. This is a pillar of change, whatever that might be, good, bad, it doesn't matter. There is a huge verge and horizon, upon us at this point. We don't know what that's going to mean, but as I said, everything is energy, and energy resonates with energy. When you have so much energy, everyone's worried about this. You can't find a person that isn't, whether you believe it's real, whether you don't, whether you are in a state that's heavily affected, you're in an area that doesn't have a single case, it doesn't matter. Somehow this has impacted your life, and it's not just one country, it's not just one race, it is every person on the planet Earth knows at this point of this virus and has heard of it. Even, people who don't normally hear news and anything, they've heard it at this point. There's no way around everyone in the country, everyone in the world knowing what this is, to cause some type of feeling, some type of vibration off of that, that's certainly going to make for some type of future shift.
What do you think is going to happen maybe in the next year, next 5 years? Do you think people are going to wake up to these other things that, it seems like you and other people have kind of figured out that this isn't just it. There's always something else. It seems like we're just happy with the answer of this is it, this is that. There's nothing else to explain. I'm looking for the people that want to see more in that, want to point more out of the picture than this small piece it seems like we have.
Well, I mean, I don't think it'll ever flip over. There's people say, oh man, I think that there's going to be just a huge population that thinks like I do and thinks like people like me do. And I don't know if that's the case. There will always be more and more people opening their eyes and seeing for the first time. But there will always be a much, much bigger crowd that walks around aimlessly and blind. I mean, that's just the way that it's going to be, because that is the easy route. And most people are complacent. You have to work for change. As I said, you might dream of being a bodybuilder, but if you don't pick up a weight, you're never going to be one. You can fantasize about it. You can get so deep in your thoughts that you feel like you're one internally, but you'll never be one unless you pick that weight up. There are practices and procedures that need to be put into place to become amazing or professional at anything. And if you're not doing the work, you're not going to get there. And I think that that's the problem, is people don't want to put in the work. So the day to day, even though you'll complain about life, you won't change it because it's easy. It's easy just to know that I'm going to go to bed, wake up, go to work, see what life throws at me today, come home, go to bed, and just do it over and over again. It's what procedures are you putting in place to start changing you? Then after you change you, what can you then do after you've mastered yourself to change the world and the ones around you, so that each one of you become a beacon, that you're putting off a signal, a very strong signal of, hey, I'm helping myself and others. And if enough people did that, great things would happen in the world. There's no reason for suffering and sorrow, poverty and sickness. A lot of the things that we experience are because of greed, and because that's the easy route. And that's the route that we've been programmed to believe. And that's the route that a lot of people make a lot of money off of. But there's no need. There's enough abundance in this world that we could all live amazing. It might not be extreme highs, extreme lows, but we could live a very comfortable, even life like a lot of other countries and a lot of other cultures do. But we choose to want greed because we're greedy. We want to have everything. And when you have everything, you actually have nothing. You don't see that all the things you really need, you don't have, because you focused it with other things, material items. You blur your vision of what's in here by what's in your wallet, what you have, what you can show off, what you can present to the world.
As I've said in the past, we brag in public and we cry in private.
Yeah, most of the people that have everything and project the feeling of, I have everything I ever wanted. I'm a badass. They drive the nicest cars. They flaunt the nicest suits. Most of them people are very, very miserable. And I know a lot of them. I know a lot of people that do very well in an industry that they have made a name for themselves, but they are shitty people. I mean, in life, they are not happy. They hate themselves. They hate everyone around them. And that's sad that you focus your whole life. And that was me at one point in time. My focus was always, how can I get myself bigger and bigger and bigger? And how can people know me and I make my mark on the world? And then you start to realize how sickening is that, that you have to, your egos hurt so much that you got to stroke yourself by going out there and getting applause and approval from other people. And you're like, wow, I live my life for approval of others. Even though I'll tell people, I don't care what other people think. Yes, you do, because you go out and play shows, you go out and entertain, you go out and do something that gains fans because that makes you feel like you're important in life. But when you realize that none of that matters, you're like, oh my God, I figured out a big piece of the puzzle, that I need to be happy in myself before I can ever be happy in anything else. And no one does that. Everyone always focuses on the outer and never the inner. I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, folks, if you're listening out there, but God damn it, focus on the inner and you'll get it.
Couldn't say it any better myself. I guess that's why they say what it's you said it's brutal entertainment.
Brutal business. Yeah. Brutal business entertainment, BBE.
I'm telling you, that's why you're the host of or leader. I guess I would say, yeah, leader's a fit term, right? Even though it's a network, you're not really the host. You're
Yeah.
more of
No,
a
I mean,
leader.
I would be lead investigator, one of three, and then I'm the founder. So I mean, it's whatever you want to call it.
Well, that's why you're.
I'm just a guy in a house with a flashlight.
Let me tell you something. You're a badass with a flashlight. That's what it is, man. I appreciate you giving me the time of your day to be able to do this, man. I know trying to coordinate this, like we said in the beginning, was it was crazy trying to get the schedules pinned down. But I'm so happy for this conversation, man.
Absolutely, man. It's always a good time. I love meeting people and resonating with people. That's what it's all about. It's just, meeting folks and sharing something similar and having good conversation. That's really the point of life.
Please plug everything you want to promote, man.
So if you were listening out there, make sure you go to teambrutalbusiness.com. Just as it sounds, teambrutalbusiness.com. That'll give you updates on everything we're doing, from the radio to the video game stream team, to the models, to events, even though there's not a lot of events happening right now with COVID. So, be patient, but we always have a ton of stuff coming out entertainment wise. And, certainly got a lot coming up in the near future. Make sure you check out Celestial Oddities Pair of Normal Guys podcast radio and Celestial Oddities Odd World, two different shows that we do on the supernatural and paranormal. Odd World takes phone calls from around the world to hear great encounters from others. And Pair of Normal Guys goes into depth on all kinds of different topics. We also got Uncovering the Underground radio show, where we bring artists from all over the world on and interview them, get to dig into their brain and find out who they are. And make sure you check out Celestial Oddities Para Seekers on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and Twitter, and all that other stuff near you soon. If we're not on it yet, we will be in the next few weeks. We are a brand new paranormal team from the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. 6 of us, father and son, 2 best friends, husband and wife, kind of an interesting medley of people there. And we bring something different to the table that you don't normally see. We pride ourselves on professionalism and being honest with our stuff. We've caught a lot of things on film that we could present to you and you'd be mind blown, but we figured out why, know that it's not actually happening. But we have too much integrity to present that. So if you want to see people that are real, that are funny, that are a good group of people that are going to present you actual information and not be scared to go into buildings, we don't run out of buildings screaming. We are there for it. If it's active, we want to be there. Check out Celestial Oddities Para Seekers, cops. And other than that, I just want to thank you, brother. Out of the Blank podcast, is a great podcast. I've checked out a few of your episodes now. So thank you for having me on the show, and certainly look forward to maybe talking again down the road.
For sure, man. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.